Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be installing the Fox 2.0 Stage 1 suspension kit on my 2020 Ford Ranger. This kit includes a pair of Fox 2.0 front coilovers and 2.0 rear shocks. This kit can add up to 3 inches of lift in the front and handle 1.5 inches of rear leveling. I'll be showing you how to install this kit at home in your garage with just simple tools and no lift. The first step is to remove your tires and get your truck on jack stands. Place your front tires under your frame, as well as your jack just under the lower control arm for additional safety. Now to install the Fox kit. First, with an 8mm socket and ratcheting wrench, remove the bolt with the ABS sensor line bracket. Next, using a 10mm socket, disconnect the brake line bracket. Also disconnect the ABS wire from the upper control arm. Usually you'll want to use an automotive trim clip tool remover, but you can also pull and wiggle the clips out by hand. Next, I loosen the 2 brake caliper bolts so I can remove the caliper and the rotor. With the brake line attached, I set the caliper aside using a spare jack stand and secured it to the rear crash bar via some bungee cords. Next, use a 35mm socket to remove the axle nut. We will be popping the axle out of its hub later to put a little less stress on the CV joint. Now, using a 15mm socket, remove the tie rod from the knuckle. Give it a couple taps with a hammer to help loosen it up. Next, using an 18mm socket, remove the sway bar end link from the knuckle. This will allow for more movement to get the shocks out. Again, using an 18mm socket, remove the upper control arm from the knuckle. Again, hit the side of the knuckle with a hammer to help loosen it up. I then remove the axle from the hub. Carefully strike the end with the hammer to remove. Again, this will allow for more articulation without having to worry about popping the inner CV joint out of place. Now remove the top bolts from the factory strut using a 15mm socket. At the bottom of the strut are 2 18mm bolts that need to be removed. Next, I loosely replace the sway bar link on the knuckle before installing the Fox coilover. When the new shock is in place, there won't be much room for movement, so doing this first makes it easier. Next, install the Fox coilover by lining up the 3 bolts up top, then loosely tighten the new hardware so you have some play. My bottom mount didn't line up with the holes on the lower control arm. This is not abnormal. You may need to use a pry bar or some other tool, like I did, to twist the bottom out a bit until you can get the holes to line up. When you get the shocks lined up straight, tighten everything down using a 19mm socket for the bottom and a 17mm for the top hardware. With the new Fox 2.0 in, you'll likely need some help connecting the upper control arm back onto the knuckle. To keep from spinning the ball joint, use an 8mm socket and an 18mm wrench to tighten the nut. Repeat the same process to reattach the tie rod to the knuckle, using a 7mm socket and a 15mm wrench. I finished up by reinstalling the rotor and caliper, as well as reinstalling the ABS and brake line hardware. It's also important to note that you should replace your axle nut once removed. I have some on order through my Ford dealer. With everything reconnected, your new Fox 2.0 coilover is installed. The process is the same on the other side. The rear shock is considerably easier to install. Simply unbolt the stock shock and replace it with the Fox 2.0. One of the things you need to consider is make sure that the nut doesn't fall out of its channel. If it does, it can be difficult to orient, especially on the top mount given the limited space. And don't do what I did, cutting the retaining strap until after you get it installed. This will make it way easier to fit the shock into the mounts. With that, I successfully replaced my stock FX4 suspension with the Fox Stage 1 kit. The truck is leveled out now and has a way better stance. I then took my truck on a quick test drive, first taking on a very bumpy Texas back roads, as well as on some newly paved highway. The Ranger no longer feels like you're driving a boat and has stiffened up considerably while remaining comfortable to drive. I look forward to taking the truck off-road, and we'll do a full review once I get some more miles on it. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to subscribe, as I have more mods ready for the Ranger.